and welcome to Irish Canna Clinic. In our series of talks, Canna We Talk Now. And so there's one today. We have a very inspiring guest for the entire cannabis community in Ireland, particularly, and even I think his story should be out in the world, because there are people all across the world who are suffering injustices because of because of a plant that is a plant medicine that is genuinely helping people. So I'm going to give today's call some context. I'm going to read a little bit from what Peter Reynolds wrote, because he was in the courtroom as Patrick Moore was, telling people about what Patrick Moore. So this is the story of Patrick Moore. So I'm going to read a little bit, and then we're going to meet the man himself. So Patrick Moore lives with his partner and his two children in a rural county Limerick in Ireland. In September 2020, at the height of the pandemic, a huge force of armed Gardaí raided their home. Patrick was out at the time, so Ali, his partner, and their two children were faced with 15 armed men brandishing automatic weapons. Ali called Pat and he returned home immediately. He told the Gardaí there were cannabis plants growing in the shed at the back of the house, and handed them the key so that they could investigate. They discovered 19 plants, 3 small seedlings, and the rest in various stages of flowering. They also collected together some bags of trim, which had been put aside to make oil, amounting in total to 2.4 kilograms. The Gardaí also found 2 notebooks which recorded financial transactions and a calendar that indicated cultivation had been going on for some time. Last week at Limerick District Court, having already pleaded guilty to cultivation and supply, Pat attended his sentencing hearing. The whole family was there, and I went along. This is Peter Reynolds writing. I went along to offer moral support. We waited from 11 a.m. until the case was finally called at around 4 p.m. The trim was valued by Gardaí at 48,000 euros. That's 20 euros per gram, and the plants at 15,000 euros, 15,200 euros. That's 800 euros each. A total of 63,200, approximately. Well, he translates it into sterling. By 5:30 p.m., he had been sentenced to 5 years in jail, with the final 2 suspended, which is Peter referred to it as a completely disproportionate sentencing, and because this man is a caregiver, and for many he's a legend, and he's a legend. We consider him an absolute legend here in Irish Canna Clinic, and because we have in this series of talks, we've had 2 people. We've had one person who's suffering from fibromyalgia, wearing a balaclava. Get that into your psyche. He's a guy suffering from fibromyalgia, and he's having to wear a balaclava because he's growing to get his plant medicine to treat his illness. We've also got Green Tea, who's a legend grower for other patients. So this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about caregivers, people who have the skills and discovered that they have the skills and they can help people. And that's what they're doing. They're caregivers. So I want to introduce you all, please. Big round of applause for Patrick Moore. How are you doing, man?
All good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's Peter Reynolds has kind of given his article, which I think I'll leave all the links for everybody else. It'll be anybody wants to read further. It'll be in the description of this clip. But so Patrick, you're a caregiver. I'd like to hear a little bit of the origin of the caregiving that you. I believe your father, is that?
Well, actually, it started with my wife.
Right.
I've been growing cannabis for about 30 years. And then we moved to Ireland in 2006. And my wife developed Crohn's disease.
Right.
We'd never heard of it. It's a digestive issue. So it just, it just came on all of a sudden. She went to the doctor, and she was rushed to hospital. Was in hospital for like 5 days, and They said she was going to have surgery. She was going to be on medication for the rest of her life. And while she was in hospital, they basically, pumped her full of steroids. She came out, she looked terrible. She felt terrible. And that was the first time I've ever heard of kind of Crohn's disease or anything like that. So I started researching it, and one of the first searches that I went on, basically it said that cannabis was really good for Crohn's.
Absolutely.
So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to look at that. And then I did some more research, and I found Rick Simpson then. So, up to that point for me, cannabis was something that I decided to grow when I was 14, really. That's kind of, I got in Bob Marley, and then I did, found out about Rastafarianism and how they treat the plant, as sacred. And so I was like, hey, yeah, that sounds something like I would like to do, So that's why I initially started growing cannabis, because I like smoking cannabis. I like growing it, breeding it. So, but then I never really tuned into the actual medicinal qualities of cannabis, but that was the trigger for me. I started to make oil. Ali started taking oil. We changed her diet, and she started doing yoga and meditation.
Right.
So those three things, over a period of a few years, cured her of her Crohn's.
Wow.
So, that started me on this. We had to go back to a consultant. So I had done research. So 2 months later, we have to go back to see a consultant who was basically the surgeon who was going to do the operation, And I had these questions that I already knew the answers to, because I had this kind of mistrust of the mainstream media anyway, because just through my own experiences, So I had two questions basically. It was, all right, is there anything we can do? Is there anything we can do about changing the diet to help the symptoms? And is there any connection between Crohn's and stress? Because those were like two of the things that I researched that basically are directly connected to digestive issues, which seem to become a lot from anxiety and stress. So there's a major link between anxiety, stress, and these digestive issues like irritable bowel, ulcerated colitis, Crohn's disease. So I asked the questions, and the answers I got, is there anything we can do about the diet? Should we change anything in our diet? He said, no, just keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to change anything. He was going to take care of everything for us by cutting pieces out of her.
Wow.
And, stress. He said, well, this is how he described it. He said, well, it's a digestive issue. It's a disease of the digestive system. It's got nothing to do with, up here. So obviously he's telling me like this is not linked to down there, which is ludicrous anyway to start with.
Right.
Right. That's the last time we ever saw him. That was it. For me, that was a lie. I mean, this man is well educated. He knows what he's talking about. And if he can't go and Google something, I did that in 10 minutes. I Googled it, and I knew within 10 minutes what causes these things. But he was determined to go and start slicing bits out. So, and I know that that's what he gets paid for. So he's just taking care of his mortgage, and he's
doing his job.
But I also know then people where I live who have gone down that route, and he did say, there is a possibility that you might have to have a colostomy bag for the rest of your life. You're going to be on medicine, you're going to be taking pills for the rest of your life, and you're going to have a bag. And I know people in my community, at least 5 people over the years that I've spoken to, that have gone down that mainstream route, and they have got colostomy bags, and they are on medication for the rest of her lives. Is cured. She doesn't have Crohn's disease anymore. So, you know, I rest my case in that respect. You know, meditation, yoga, don't eat white bread, don't eat corrosive stuff for the digestive system, and
it's kind of a lot. It's a lot of this now is kind of be, you know, the gut biome. We have more nerves in our stomach and in you know, so there's a more integrative medical approach that needs to be taken, and by but still not there. So that was the UK, was it?
That was Ireland.
But that was Ireland. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You see, we had two little babies. You know, our children, they're teenagers now, but there's only 11 months between them. Irish twins, they're called, aren't they? You know?
Right.
So the stress that goes with, you know, two kids, 11 months between them is, you know, it'll drive you insane, basically, you know. So that was, you know, it was linked to that. We also, you know, we were running a business, you know, we were doing farmers markets, you know, it's just life, you know, life gets stressful, you know, but there's ways to alleviate that. And
sure.
Going under the surgeon's knife and, you know, and taking pills for the rest of your life, that's not going to alleviate it. You know, there's ways to do it, and it's not that is not the route.
Yeah, and you're compounding on top of your illness, you know.
Oh, 100%. You're just, you know, you're setting yourself up for issues down the line. Like the liver is going to be probably the issues you're going to have with your liver is after taking pills for like 10 years. I mean, I meet people like that. You know, I meet people who have suffered that, and now they've got all these, you know, all these other issues because they've been taking medication for 10 years, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't need it.
You know, and particularly things like IBS and the things that you're talking about. There's so much studies now, you know, showing real proper proof of what's the success with cannabis. So it started with RSO, and what you learned the skills to make the oils.
Yeah, I just basically, you know, I tuned into Rick Simpson. He, like, that guy changed the world, didn't he? You know, he did, man. Like, simplified it, man. You know, here's your kitchen. This is what you need. Go and do it. Here's old Bob. He's 90 years of age. They told him like 10 years ago he was going to be dead, and here he is 10 years later driving his car down the Canadian kind of back road. You know, so that was enough for me. You know.
So that was quite a dramatic day that Peter, that image that came up. I mean, the Irish Gardaí were a little bit over, you know, they were over the top, were they? 19 cops, a bunch of automatic weapons. Yeah,
it seemed, you know, a bit extreme, you know. I don't know what they thought they were coming into, but I don't know. I think it's a scare tactic, isn't it? You know, you get a load of people. Like there was one vanguarder, one female officer, and the rest were men, you know.
Right.
And, you know, I've got a wife and a daughter. So there's two females in the house.
Sure.
Which was like, it's quite intimidating. We had to sit there and, you know, but then I got taken away, you know, so they arrested me, and I was, you know, within an hour they drove me to Limerick, Henry Street. And but it was the female officer was driving the car, which was the thing. So
right.
You know, my two daughters and my son, or my wife, my daughter, and my son were then left in the house with all these males. You know, there was no, you know, I'm sure there's some, you know, you've basically got two females and no female officer. So, I mean, that's not right.
No, and it's surprising that it could happen. We're not talking about the dark ages here. This is 2020.
You know? I know, yeah. But it's scare tactics. I mean, they want you to feel like a criminal. They talk to you like you're a criminal. They call you, you know, scumbag and this and that. And so
what do you think about that? Do you think it's about is it this crazy classification that we have to live with from 1977, that, you know, cannabis is the same as heroin, is the same as cocaine? It's just all, you know.
But they don't believe that, do they? They're not idiots. I mean, they know what cannabis is.
Yeah.
You know, so like, they're intelligent people. Their parents have probably smoked cannabis. They've smoked cannabis. You know, well, fair enough. In the 50s, like my parents were born in 1934. I'm 56. So
Right.
like that generation wouldn't be familiar with cannabis. Right. So my parents, and my mom's 90 now, so she wouldn't have had experienced cannabis, but there's grandparents. I'm a grandparent now.
Wow.
So I've experienced, so there's every generation has now experienced, like my mom, she's 90. So that generation is, coming to the end of their life. But everyone after that has come into contact with cannabis. So there's no excuse for trying to write it off as some crazy drug like this. We're talking about, what was that in the 30s in America? It was like reefer madness.
Reefer madness, yeah.
That we know about that. We've read the story of that and what that was all about. We know that was it was there to basically demonize cannabis, but not because it was dangerous, but because there's an alternative motive to that. There's money and greed and power
and racism.
And what? Pardon?
A lot of racism in those.
Oh yeah, well that was the Mexicans. That was all based about, and the Chinese. It was like, I've basically, after I was arrested, I did a course online with Ganjier in America, and part of that was the history of prohibition of cannabis. So I looked at the whole story there about the Chinese with their opium, and then how they just tied cannabis into that because that was right. We need to compartmentalize the Mexicans. We need to So yeah, the racist thing runs through this. I mean, it runs straight through it. It's like
Anslinger, the Anslinger laws.
Yeah,
they were built on nothing else, only racism. So it's kind of like the origins. It's the demonization origin story, isn't it?
It is, and we all know that. So like the detectives that arrested me know that.
Yeah.
The judge that sat and passed sentence on me knows that. I mean, she's probably smoked cannabis. All these people have smoked cannabis. They know what it is. So we know that it's not about cannabis being some kind of dangerous drug for society, that it's all going to, like reefer madness. We're all going to go crazy and start robbing people and whatever. They know that's not true. So there's like, what is the reason? Why are they coming down so hard on cannabis?
I want to say, though, that socially, that demonization has been incredibly successful. And we have, like, Ireland is still quite a conservative country. And so demonization, we're still here. We're still having this conversation. Shocking. 2023.
It is. I don't think, the amount of cocaine that's been taken in Ireland as we speak, we're not that conservative in Ireland. I mean, it's across the board. There's grandparents taking cocaine in Ireland today.
Yeah.
There's the grandparents, the kids of the grandparents and the kids of the grandchildren.
3 generations.
That's where we're at. We know the danger of you go to any pub in Ireland today, man, and there'll be someone in the toilet snorting cocaine.
Yeah. I know, and this is we're calling it, it's been called an epidemic now. We have an epidemic. It's obviously got to do with, it's cocaine epidemics are generally got to do with if the economy's going well, then people have money for coke, and then it's the easiest drug of all, and it's the worst drug in the sense that I don't believe it offers the user much, and but there you go. It's easy. It's like sugar.
Yeah. Well, it goes, like you say, a prosperous society and country, then that's when cocaine use really starts up, isn't it? I mean, that's probably not by accident either, though. I mean, if you want to go, like, you start looking at the source of cannabis coming into your country, or cocaine. If you start tracking, or how does it actually get in? Who's running the cocaine? We're led to believe this whole thing is run by criminals from South America, but there's other players in the game here. It's the same with heroin. You know,
But then infamously facilitated by a couple of our notorious drug gangs, which are notorious because they're the Kinahans. They have names and they generally have nicknames. We tend to glamorize. In Ireland, we are glamorizing this drug gang world. It's a little bit like a gang. There was like a TV series, Love Hate, and ever since then, it's like a glamorized.
I never watched it. Yeah, yeah, but there's still, you know, there. I just wonder how, you know, a few people from inner city Dublin become like multi-billionaires. I mean, how do you get to that level?
Yeah,
you know, that doesn't happen by accident. I mean, that's facilitated.
Yeah,
You know, so
absolutely.
there's a bigger picture here. You know, we're you know, it's like there's a lot going on in the world.
It leaks out every now and again, Pat. It leaks out, and you'll have a bit of a controversy up in Athlone. There was a bunch of like a little cartel of police involved and dealers in Athlone. You know, I come from Granard in Longford, and it's like Athlone is I perceive it as a small town. I mean, they are small towns, for God's sake, but and then you had a right little corrupt little silo happening of police and dealers in
all over, yeah, all over the country. It's everywhere, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
so they're all little silos around the country of little corrupt silos.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
and then that's worldwide, you know.
Yeah. So what did they? So what other patients came into your sphere then? That so you're making RSO, you're making the oils, and yeah, and then the community was hearing things that Pat has great oil.
Well, you know, I'm also involved in healing circles, you know, so I was involved with spiritualism and, you know,
right.
Sitting in circle in ceremonies. So I had a grow shop, and basically I knew that the medicine was good. I also knew that when you sit in circle and you start to open up your heart and you start to bring the energy in, then that energy can also be connected to the plant, you know. So that's, you know, that's where I was at. I was basically programming seeds. So we would sit in ceremony with the seed. So we'd have a patient who, you know, we've had patients with loads of different diseases, you know, basically from, you know, prostate cancer, leukemia, you know, anxieties, across the board, you know, anything you can think of. We've had people walk in the door, you know. So they would come to the circles, people would come to, you know, the grow shop. I'd chat to them, and mostly I was meeting people of my age. You know, the idea in society, I think, or people who don't know, is, oh, it's all like young 20-somethings are growing weed all over the place. The people I met coming in my door were people who had been suffering, you know, and had done the research like I had, and found out that cannabis is a great medicine. So that opened up everything. So once I knew that it worked for Ali, my wife, I knew that it was a true medicine. So that changed everything.
One friend has also a PPMS. I'm a little bit of I would have a bit of profile for being a PPMS patient, which is primary progressive multiple sclerosis, which is kind of like you're just going downhill, and there's no way back. And they say there's no treatment, no cure. And but I didn't kind of like that prognosis, and I ended up in Russia, and I did a stem cell transplant 6 years ago. And I was told 6 years ago that I was 6 months away from a wheelchair. But I'm in this MS world, and people kind of tend to contact me if, you know, because PPMS is the worst of the MS diagnoses, let's say, because there's no way back. You're just going downhill. And so I was, these friends of my parents out in Fuerteventura, they had a friend of theirs that had a daughter who also had PPMS. So they hooked us up together. And so then it ended up, anyway, long story short, I suggested that they try cannabis. And so they're like dairy farmers from Mitchelstown. You know, they're not people who got, you know, readily go looking down the pub
Yeah.
looking for a 9 bar or something. so, but anyway, so that's who they are, and so but they were determined because the daughter was going downhill quite badly. I would speak on the phone with her, and it was like between the space of 3 years, she had gone from go from 1 stick, 2 sticks, roll later happens quite, and it began to happen quite quickly for her progression. And so the guys, the father, he decided, okay, I'm going to find a way to get some cannabis, and so he went into their Cork, and he's from Mitchelstown, and so they went off to into the wilds of West Cork, and they found a guy like similarly to yourself, the same generation, who has the experience, that are growing proper product, and so he was but he had to go through that whole
Oh yeah, I know.
drug experience.
You're not necessarily going to meet the right person either. You don't know if you meet a criminal. You don't know what the motive is. And I think that's a crucial. If you're going to make medicine, then you have to come from the heart. And the thing for me was, I think we're in this situation today with mainstream medicine because it's an industry to make money. And I was determined not to sully the medicine by having a money exchange. I couldn't take money for it. I wanted it to come from my heart and to them, knowing that I actually gave a fuck, that I cared about them and I wanted them to be healed. And I would sit down and talk to them and tell them the process of what was going on. I kept a mother. I had it for 10 years, a mother plant. And this plant was amazing. It was, I bred everything through her. So everything came through this mother. And, we'd get a seed and we would bring it to ceremony. We'd sit with it. We'd set intent in that seed before it was in. Then that person, whoever the medicine was for, they would take that medicine. They would, like this is a Native American Indian thing that my spiritual mentor, he's sat with the Native Americans and he's a very knowledgeable person. They would do that with their food. They would take the seed and put it on their tongue, sit with it, set the intent that they wanted from that food, and then go forth and cultivate. And that was the process for us. We would, whoever we were working with, we would grow the medicine for them, and we would set the intent, and then they would set their intent for what they want. And then that's why I believe that the medicine that I produced was so strong and it was so successful for the person, because the intent was to heal. It did come from a loving place, and I've seen what that does. So I think for me, intent and heart, love, energy, that makes a difference in what you're growing. But the other thing was, what I wanted people to do as well was actually to grow their own plants, because then you can sit with your plant. You can set the intent every day. You tend it. You exchange. There's an exchange, and that mother plant over the 10 years, it basically started to give me what I needed. What I wanted, because I would tend that plant every day, and I would take a clone off of that plant, and then I would tend that. And 10 years of working with the same plant.
That's beautiful, man.
It's true, man. That for me, this is a revelation in itself, because if people actually tune into what they can do, what they have themselves, and what they can pass to what they want. They want to grow a plant that's going to heal them. They sit with that plant. They meditate, and then they go through the whole process, and they keep love and compassion and empathy in their heart when they're working, and be conscious of that. Then that goes into the plant. I mean, and people might think I'm a lunatic, but I've seen it. I mean, I've worked with cannabis for 30 years, and then I worked with it as a medicine. That's like moving into like 12, 15 years now. So you know, I know what that can do. So that is the difference with it being just a commercial product or a medicine. And anybody can do that. And if someone's sick and they start tending their own plant and they start setting the intent, then they will produce the medicine that they need. And I honestly, wholeheartedly believe that, and I've seen it with my own eyes. You know,
it's a human right, man, to be able to explore these things and to know that the plant medicine is there and that you should be able to take advantage of it. It totally it's a denial of our basic rights. I mean, who's telling us that we can't you know, share a plant medicine and be part of you know, that world?
well, the bankers, you know, the people that run the world, you know, they're the people that tell us we can't do that because they don't want us. You know, there's no money in it for them. They you know, the middleman has to get his cut, and that was like why I would never take money for the medicine, because as soon as you there's an exchange and you buy into the monetary system, which is
right,
rooted and satanic and based on, you know, blood, and you know, we won't even don't start me on that one, but
right.
you know, it's dirty, and there's an alternative motive to it, and it's not love and compassion and empathy. So to take money for something that I genuinely want to heal somebody with would be doing an injustice to all the work that I had done to that point. Then to throw it all away because I want to take some paper money, you know.
Yeah.
It was
so you had real successes. You had people testifying for you in that court case. I mean,
I had a stack of testimonials, you know.
Yeah.
And I had my certification from the Ganjier in America. I you know, to finalize that, I'd have to go to America and sit their exam. You know, that I haven't managed to do that yet, but I'm not sure if I will, you know, with a criminal record. But you know, so
another tragedy of this prohibition, you know, these are skills that Ireland has to hold on to. You know, we can't criminalize people and deny them, you know, the ability to travel to America and progress what they're doing. Shocking.
It's ridiculous, but it's not by accident. That's, you know, none of this stuff happens by accident. There's an issue here, and it's a lot bigger than people realize. You know, there's you know, it's a control thing. It's criminalizing your population. It's, you know, all these things are put in place so that it becomes an us and them. You know, then there's not terrorism anymore. We the population will be the enemy. That is, you know, that's where it's going. The population will be the enemy, and then there'll be a higher group who police and, you know, the criminals who they have managed to criminalize everyone. You know, it's plants based now. It'll be something else. They just legislate to, you know,
but they have the power to legislate out of it as well, you know. And this is why, because in Ireland we have quite a small, like you say, you know who your local politicians are in Limerick. You know who they are. You know what they are. You know.
Yeah, I do.
But you know what I mean is there's a kind of proximity to that kind of proximity to power is a like the kind of idea of a small town kind of politician is one of lane fixing, and you know, and
yeah. I need a parking space outside my door, kind of thing. Yeah.
You know, those big issues, but at the end of the day, but then there's a lot of self-serving going on, but at the end of the day, they have the power to kind of make changes happen, and that's the frustrating thing that we're kind of constantly. You have a lot of activists in Ireland. Like we have I'll give a big shout out on this call tonight to the Cannabis Activist Alliance, who would have been coming down to. I think they visited you down in Limerick. You would have had like John O'Regan and all those people that are out there, kind of who are part of this community, and they're so frustrated. And we were kind of fobbed off for a long, long time. There's a citizens' assembly coming, and that this is the outsourcing of decision making by politicians that are paid to make decisions, and it's the outsourcing of that because they don't have the moral courage to change laws, and you know, it's very disillusioning to fibromyalgia patient in a balaclava. What the hell is that?
I know. Well, you know, what they want, the establishment, is for that patient to be going to the hospital and taking the pill. They don't want you exploring your own healing abilities. I mean, because then the middleman, you don't need the middleman. Just you and the plant. There's no one in between that, and there's no way for that establishment then to make money out of that. So
what other I'll just interject on you again. What other successes, like success is the wrong word maybe, but like what other kind of good outcomes did you have with other? I think you had a Huntington's disease?
Yeah.
A gentleman?
Yeah, he really did well actually. He passed now since. There's over the years there's been so many. I mean, I had a guy one time. This is a funny one actually. I did a Vipassana. It's a 10-day silent retreat. And we went to Dundalk. They in Ireland they hold them normally in boarding schools during the holiday period. You know, so I was up there at Easter for 10 days. So basically, it's silent retreat. There's no you introvert and you meditate for 10 days. It's you fast, a lot of fasting. You'd have breakfast and then you wouldn't eat for the rest of the day, and you'd be meditating for hours, like 11 hours or 12 hours. Like you'd have little breaks, but I've done a lot of meditation, so
right.
But I was sharing a room. There was 5 or 6 of us in the room, and so you're obviously not speaking. You can't even look at the other person. You have to, because you might, they're on their journey, so you can't mess with anyone. So all the etiquette, which I found interesting actually. The politeness that we're brought up with, like open the door. When you sit across from someone having a meal, you chat to them, all these things it's just in you to be polite. So all of that goes out the window, and initially, maybe a day or two, it's like, oh, you walk through the door, you don't look if there's someone coming behind you to leave it open. That's engaging. But after a day or two of that, it's quite liberating not to have to, all the etiquette that is actually ingrained in us. You can just let all that go and just be completely within yourself. So, but anyway, I'm in a room with 5 other people, 5 other guys, and we're not obviously no interaction. So 10 days. So we go through the whole thing. It's quite hard because you're sitting in positions, cross-legged or whatever for hours, and it's very hard on the body, But so on day 9, the day before you go home, you can talk. They say, all right, everyone can chat now. So we'll chat and this guy is just down the road from me. He literally lives, 10 minutes away from me. So we're chatting away then. So then I finished that, and then about a year later, the guy walks into my grow shop, and he didn't even know it was me. His father had prostate cancer, and he didn't have health insurance. So he wanted to make Simpson oil, and he basically went out and bought an ounce of cannabis, paid 350 or 400 euros for it. And you're not going to make much oil out of that. That's it's a lot of money. So he couldn't afford it. So basically, he decided that he was going to grow his own. So he comes in, he walks in, he's like, Pat, we're passing it. We had a right good chat earlier. So he tells me about his dad. So his dad was basically, diagnosed with prostate cancer, no insurance. So they put him on the list. They said, look, it'll be 2-3 years or whatever. You'll probably be dead by then, kind of thing. Yeah. So there's this mid-70s dad, his dad, you know, mid-70s, who's now depressed because they told him he's going to die. He's got prostate cancer, you know. So he comes in. He can't afford to be buying ounces of cannabis at €400. So I tell him basically, look, what I've set up here is people that grow need all the luck and good karma that they can get, basically. So what I was doing was, when I would speak to people who would come in, you know, wanting to grow cannabis, I'd say, well, look, mostly the trim from cannabis is a waste product for a lot of people. You know, they just don't go through the bother of drying it or processing it, just, you know, sure, on the flower, you know, the bud. So I'd speak to them and say, look, I basically make oil to help people who are in, you know, the cancers, or they're ill, basically, or they're dying. And this is just, even if they're gone to the point where there's of no return, even then the medicine is good, because it helps with that process of acceptance, and, you know, and it eases that whole journey to end of life, you know. So so I would say, right, when you're trimming your cannabis, dry the trim, and I'll take it off you, and I will make oil out of that, and I will give that oil to people who need it for free. So I'm not going to charge them. So, you know, you don't charge me, I don't charge them. You get the good karma points from giving something for free, knowing that it's going to people who need it, and you get those karma points because you need them, because you're being hunted by the establishment. They're looking for you because you're a criminal, and, you know, you're taking part in criminal activity. So you need all the luck you can get. So for you, that's a good thing. So that's what would happen. People would come, bring me trim, I would make the oil, and I would give it out. So, you know, I relayed that to my friend from Vipassana, whose father had prostate cancer, and so that's what happened. So we made the oil. He didn't grow because he you know, he was out of desperation. He was going to start growing cannabis, but he really didn't have, you know, the space to grow it, really, to be quite honest. He was like, and he was working, and so it was like a last ditch attempt to help his dad. That's what he was doing. So in the end, he didn't have to do that, because, you know, there was enough people bringing trim to me to make oil that he didn't have to do that. So his father started taking oil, you know, and he phoned me 2 years later, and he said that his dad, basically, the prostate cancer, he'd gone back, and it was non-existent at this stage. So whatever he'd been doing, it was obviously, you know, he was depressed when that man walked in the door to me and told me the story. He said his dad was really down, you know, and I know that, you know, the diagnosis, the cancer diagnosis kills 30%. Just being told you've got cancer will kill you. 30% of the people die because of the diagnosis. The majority of the rest of them die because of the treatment. And then the ones that pull through will get their second dose of cancer from the treatment, maybe 5 or 10 years down the line. He, 2 years later, was in a really good place, a great place. No, whatever was going on had been knocked back. Place. I've had people who have been. One guy was addicted to crack cocaine, and he told me that that was the only thing that kept him off of crack, was having been able to take oil every day. So that's why I say that cannabis is a gateway drug to you know, getting away from your addictions, of your opioid addictions, or your cocaine.
An exit drug.
It is. It's a gateway to a new life, man. A new way of looking at things, you know. And you know, addiction. See, when we sit in ceremony, we get a lot of people coming in with addictions, you know, and you know, addiction is a lot of the time is based on some kind of trauma. Anyway, you're holding a trauma. You find a substance that fills a hole in you, and then you drop into your addiction, and you're there for 10 years, and then the detrimental effects of the substance that you're taking start to make you realize now you've got an addiction. It's very detrimental to the body and the mind, and you start looking for a way out of that. And then we get people walking into ceremony to find a way to start to rebuild their lives, and that's the majority of the people that we see in ceremony are either very ill, have got really high anxiety. High anxiety is that's one of the most we see, actually, because it seems now like we're living in the society we live in now is fear-based. Everything, mainstream media is constantly battering you with the end of the world. Now when I was growing up, it was right. They're going to press the button, right? Russia's going to press the button, and we all have to run under our desks at school and hope that the fucking roof doesn't fall in on top of us. Now it's even worse now for the generation, my children. Now it's, oh no, it's not the Russians pressing the big red button. It's you're destroying your own world. So now they put it on us that we're destroying the world now. It's not going to be a nuclear bomb. It's just us going about our daily business. Just doing that is so that fear now is so ingrained in people that it causes all these issues, all these bodily functions are starting to fail because we walk around constantly in a state of fear.
Yeah, and the world is kind of in a perpetual crisis where we're going from one, whether it's manufactured crisis or whatever it is, we're one crisis to the next. So the stress never leaves people's lives.
Never leaves, and it just gets worse, doesn't it?
It was one of the most interesting areas in that Citizens Assembly in the first weekends of it. There was a completely imbalanced idea where everything they were focusing on was negatives. We'd never heard over 200 hours and 120 speakers. I don't remember hearing any positives or benefits of the plant or of drugs in general. It was just negative experience, social disadvantage, all the lived experience. They all told great stories and all of that, but it was just negative, which is a kind of self-perpetuating kind of part of the problem, like you're painting it there.
Yeah, 100%. It's none of it's by accident, But if people just realize the power that they have within themselves, that you can learn how to meditate. I'm in Shelton Abbey now, and I'm doing breath works. We sit and we do breath. I put a soundtrack on. We close our eyes, or you put an eye mask or pull a hat down over your eyes.
With the other inmates, do you call them inmates?
We call them residents.
Residents, there you go.
Yeah. So I've got like 12 guys that will come and sit, and we drop into a deep meditation, because meditation isn't easy,
Yeah, no.
It's not an easy thing to do if you're just trying to close your eyes and sit there and think of nothing. That's not an easy thing to do. But if you facilitate breath work, which is conscious breathing, and that starts to trigger things. And then you put a soundtrack with it, so you get to go on a journey. Then you're in a deep state of meditation without the difficulties that people find when they try to meditate. And then the other thing I do is I introduce a mantra, a short sentence. And the one I basically, when I go and sit in ceremony, mantras come to me, like they do lots of other people, So I've had this mantra for years now, and it's thank you, I love you. It's gratitude and love, and it covers everything. And when you say I love you, you love yourself, you love everything around you, and you're grateful for it. And that mantra stops the monkey mind coming in, so that you're trying to sit there and meditate, but there's all of these other things coming into your head. So that short sentence, you just repeat that, and it stops all that garbage that starts running through your mind. It slows it all down and stops it. So that, you know, that's what I want to share with people, and that's what I share with the residents that I live with at the moment, you know, so that they can have some peace of mind for that hour and a half. They can sit there and just drop out of the whole thing and get relaxed. And the more you do that, the easier life gets, and the more loving you become, and the more compassionate and the more empathy you have for your fellow being, you know. And that mantra, then you repeat that whenever you think of it, whenever you find yourself, you know, off worrying about something. Because there's no point in trying to figure it all out and all these details. You know, that's basically, when I was 20, I had a major kind of breakdown with a relationship, the mother of my first child, and you know, I went through a massive kind of anxiety, and I actually developed a digestive issue when I was in my early 20s, you know, and I basically thought I had some disease, you know, it would be cramping and stomach, you know, the typical kind of digestive, which are now called Crohn's irritable bowel colitis. Yeah. So I went to my GP and I said, okay, this is back in, it would have been the late 80s. So I went to my GP and I said, could you do some blood tests? I've got some kind of disease, you know, cramping, diarrhea, vomiting, you know. So he was taking bloods and he was talking to me and saying, you know, what's going on in your life? And I was like, well, I'm going through a relationship break up and laddie that my child is like, you know. So all the worries that I had, you know. So he took the bloods and he said, right, I'll phone you, come up in a week's time, whatever, when they come back. So he phoned me and said, come up, I've got the results. So he said, right, you don't have anything, or everything is clear. You don't, you know, you're not suffering from any disease, right? He said, I think you're depressed. Okay. He said, I think you have depression because of the relationship breakdown. Right. And I'm sitting there and he said, you know, I'm gonna, you know, I can prescribe you these pills. And even at that stage in my life, I wouldn't take pills. I'm someone that never took medication. You know, I didn't believe in it. My mother kind of instilled it in me, you know. So I'm sitting in the GP's office and he's telling me this depression. So I'm thinking, right, depression, that's up here. That's the mind. And he's telling me what my mind is now having some derogatory effect on my body. So I'm like early 20s. That is the first time I ever put the mind-body connection. Up to that point, I didn't realize your mind can affect your body in that way. You know, I had no idea that. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what is going on here? He's telling me my mind is destroying my body, is attacking my body. What goes on in my mind? So he's trying to like give me pills, and I'm trying to figure out, right, okay. And while I was sitting in his office, I realized, okay, what came to me was the mind is running out of control. So how do you fix your mind? Meditation. That when I was sitting there and he was talking pills and I'm thinking meditation, I need to meditate. I need to learn how to meditate because that's how you still the mind. So this is the interesting thing. You know, then like 30 odd years later, I go to a consultant in a hospital that tells me that no, there's no relationship between stress and it's a digestive disease that my wife had.
You need a pill.
A complete contradiction of 30 years ago, what a GP would tell you. A complete contradiction. So, you know, there you go. So basically I learned to meditate. But the interesting thing was a GP back in the 80s, when you went there with those symptoms, he would tell you it's depression, it's a mind connection. They won't tell you that now.
No.
They'll tell you you've got to have surgery and you've got to take pills. Well, he still wanted to give me pills though all the time.
I'm a great believer in I'm a great believer in integrative medicine. I love Ayurvedic. I do a lot of meditation myself. I think it's absolutely, people can take control of their lives again if they learn how to control their head, and the connection between head and the head and body is absolutely there. The gut biome is a very real thing. We have all this. Our entire neurology is in our gut, and so whatever is going on in your life and stress, and if you don't reduce that stress, then it's going to affect your physical well-being. So it's absolutely, man. I'm hearing you and I'm digging you.
Yeah.
So
likewise, sir.
Yeah, and you're only painting a bigger picture of the injustice of this. I mean, how can you end up that you're somehow victim to a kind of system that has a judicial system as well as a first of all.
Yeah, but it's not evidence-based, is it? This is the conclusion I've come to. Our judicial system is not based on evidence. It's based on, when you go across to the pub from the court, there'll be, your barrister will be sitting with the judge and a detective or a superintendent having lunch, deciding on what we're going to do here. So it doesn't matter what you present, because it can be dismissed by the judge because you're considered to be a criminal because you've been caught in a criminal act and you've pled guilty to that. So I had to plead guilty because I was told by my barrister, if I didn't plead guilty, I would get 10 years. I was told that you will get 10 years if you do not plead guilty. And that story so many times when I was in closed prison and now I'm in an open prison. That's how it operates. Plead guilty, everyone goes for lunch, and then it all gets decided, and then now on to the next one. No, if you plead not guilty, it has to go through, a whole trial, and the barrister has to do a lot more work for a start. And I couldn't. Yeah, and I couldn't plead not guilty because I had cannabis in the shed. So what are you pleading not guilty to? Cultivation is illegal, but the thing is, then they do you for cultivation, and then they do you for 15A, which is sale and supply, as well.
Yeah.
Because of the amount, doesn't matter. No, you was that. No, you. Well, I wasn't. Well, no, you were. You don't grow that much cannabis and not be it for sale and supply. So that just goes hand in hand, And to be quite honest,
seriousness, Patrick, this is the seriousness of it, and the fact that we can't have people like yourselves kind of fall through this criminalization crack, if you like, that you're only doing the right thing, you're bringing your skills, and you're creating oils that are genuinely helping people. The science now is passed out all this kind of demonization, and with every week we have a new study from somewhere in Canada or America, with one of the legalized states. We've now moved into the area. It's more likely that we're going to have psychedelics I would say, legalized in somewhere like Ireland than we will have cannabis. And because there's I don't know what the thing was with the cannabis, it seems to create zealots in Ireland, that the prohibitionist has become such it's so powerful. I don't know.
But if you think about it, the amount of alcohol that's consumed in this country,
3 people die a day, Patrick, they say.
Yeah, but it's linked to the prohibition of cannabis as well, because people that smoke cannabis will drink less beer. Like the amount of money that, what are they called? The big drinks producer, Diageo. I mean, the money that they have, the lobbying that they do, there's all these undercurrents going on. We've got like the pharmaceutical companies. How many factories of producing pharmaceuticals is there in Ireland? I mean, they're everywhere, man. The amount of money that they've invested here, they don't want. I mean, that's the issue. It's money and power and greed. It's, that's what it's about. They try to muster up this fear of, the plant. We all know what the plant is. They know what the plant is. That's why that's why it's so worrying for them, because they know when people start to actually understand and use cannabis in the right way, it changes you. It's a heart opener. It brings compassion and love to you. That's what it does. when you start using it and you start to sit with it and use it in ceremony and meditate with it and understand the connection that we have with this plant, that's what they're afraid of, because they will have all these compassionate, loving people in their population who won't be in fear. And that is a worry. That is, you don't want that. Rocks the status quo in a country. You know, you don't want that when people start to open up and start to realize we don't have to live in fear. That's why this
it doesn't work for the media. The media want to keep on perpetuating the, you know, the drug gangs, the wars, the this, the that. There's kids ending up in like the decapitated teenagers ending up in suitcases in Ireland. I mean, it's gone to such an extreme that you kind of wonder where does it come back. But you have a beautiful attitude. Your love of the plant is obvious, and I can see that. I'm a great believer in the same thing, you know, but we can't talk in silos somehow, because there's just so many people out there who don't really buy into that philosophy, and but we have to try and keep trying to convince one by one.
Yeah, I suppose when someone starts to have a major health crisis, then
that's when it happens.
That's when then they'll happily go to the plant.
Yeah.
When when all the other avenues have been closed down, and like when you're basically, they've taken your money. You know, the journey now, the cancer journey now is about 300,000 euros. That's what you're looking at now. It used to be 1 in 10 are going to get cancer. Now it's 1 in 2. It's programming. It's like, that's what they do. They program us to. I mean, you could, like, your mind will give you cancer. You can give yourself cancer by just living constantly in anxiety and fear. I accept that as a truth. And I also, I also know that cancer can be cured and is curable. South America is full of clinics that will cure you of cancer. They've been driven out as soon as they start, getting positive reactions from their patients in America through alternative methods. They're closed down, and they're told if they continue to practice, they will be imprisoned. They go to South America. So I don't know if you've ever heard of German New Medicine.
No.
Right. Well, that's worth Googling that. Look it up and just read that guy's story and read who he's dead now, but who he was and what he achieved in understanding not just cancer, but all diseases of the body.
What's his name again? Just so people can hear.
German New Medicine. Okay. Just look. I mean, German New Medicine for me, it changed the way I think about all disease now. And the guy, he was a scientist. So he put together, he was a Bavarian bloodline, top of his game. He was basically a lecturer in university. He patented his own surgical instruments. The guy was a genius, and he was part of the establishment. Okay.
Yeah.
Then his son was murdered. He used to go to Italy. This guy was also compassionate. He was philanthropic in the sense that he used to go down to Naples every summer and hold a clinic for the poor there, and free. But so this, free treatment for the poor people. And his kids used to holiday there. His son was murdered there when he was 21. And that man, who was a cancer specialist, developed cancer within, I think, 6 months of his son's death. And straight away, he linked it to, and that was the realization he had, because he'd been treating cancer patients for years through the mainstream kind of method. And he had that realization that this is directly linked to my son's death. My bereavement has given me cancer. And it was a particular part, it was testicular cancer. He did 2 years research. He tied it into embryology, the formation of the embryo and the body parts that form at the same time as a brain part. So he linked all that together. So this part of the brain forms, this part of the body forms. Then he had access to thousands. He treated thousands of people for their cancers over the years. he had access to all those medical reports, and he did brain scans and all these, and he basically linked lesions in the brain, which weren't, harmful, but they were just examples of what was going on. So he linked these lesions to traumas in these people's lives, and then he found that if he scanned the brain and he saw a lesion in a particular part of the brain, he knew that that person was going to get this particular type of cancer, because it was, and then that particular type of cancer was linked to a particular type of trauma. So this guy, he presented his report to his university where he was, a lecturer.
Well resourced.
Yeah, and so he presented his 2 years' work, and they basically told him to take that back.
Didn't want to know.
If he didn't, he was going to get sacked. They sacked him. This guy was at the top. He was a Bavarian. He was one of their own, right? So this will tell you how on the mark this guy was. They sacked him. They took away his license eventually. They imprisoned him. He left and he went to live in Spain, I think. And then the French extradited him and imprisoned him in France, because people were using the knowledge that he had come up with to heal themselves. So they said he was practicing in France by, default.
It sounds very kind of related to the vagus nerve, or there's you can see we're beginning I really feel we're beginning to really this area of kind of is begin to open up for the public to be able to access it, and there's so much links within the biome, or stress, and it's a reality, a modern reality, and we need to take alternative methods, like you're saying. It's called alternative. I don't believe that. I believe there's a marriage in everything, where that's but in the end you have to feel good, and
you do, yeah,
and have no stress in your life. Meditation, like you say, but then you have characters like Blind Boy. Blind Boy has 1 million followers listening to his podcast every week. People are listening to his podcast, and basically it's all about mental health and those kinds of areas that people want it, and I think we're beginning to turn a corner. Before, we'd never, especially in Ireland, we didn't. Our diet is brutal, to use an Irish adjective, and people eating too much crap, eating too much processed food, and eating too much. People are busy, and it's easy to take the convenient thing and to do the takeaway. But we don't live healthily in Ireland. That's the obvious thing to me somehow.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we have a restaurant. We run a restaurant. And so that's based on healthy eating, because it is difficult to get food, decent food, especially if say you're traveling, you're on the road, like you've got the garage food, which
chicken roll, the chicken fillet rolls, all these stuff of legend, and you go, it's just crap. Yeah.
And it all comes out of the same place. You see, this is the other thing.
Yeah.
It's coming out of like Cisco, or I think they bought up Palace Foods, so it's factory food.
I've been putting all the details of it's Green Gourm Ireland, but you have of this beautiful little thing you have in
Green.
Yeah,
it's in Abbeyfeal in County Limerick. Yeah,
perfect. So you all got to go there and support wonderful family business. Pat, I'm conscious of the time, and I've taken a lot. I'm so grateful for you giving me your time. And so, what's the future now in the immediate and midterm?
Well, basically, I've got another 15 months to do. I've got, the 2 years that was suspended. So I got 5 years, 2 years suspended, that I had to stand in court then and give a verbal bond that I wouldn't cultivate cannabis for 2 years on my release. So I need to cultivate cannabis because that's what I do, and I'm good at it. I've gone beyond just someone who grows. I've gone to the point where I can now, there's an exchange between the plant and me, and I can, like I've said, there's a process of setting intent. So, I want to teach other people how to do that. Yes. I want to continue my own work. I've got
Ireland has to take care of you, man. Instead of criminalizing you, you should be taking care of you. You're an asset.
Yeah, but I mean I need to go somewhere where I can grow cannabis without the fear of getting my door kicked in and armed masked men coming in arresting me for it.
Yeah, well, look at you go back. Do you have you're in and out? Is that how it works?
Well, basically, I'll be out. I apply every month to get out for like 4 days, and then that's it. Basically, hopefully I'll get out for Christmas. But you have to apply. You don't know if you're going to get it. But I mean, it's like Shelton Abbey it's a great place. The staff are great. The facilities are great, and the fact that they are working. It's not like a prison. Like closed prison is a different ballgame. But this open center really does. They do try to help you. So right. All praise to them. To be quite honest, we're so lucky that we've got a facility like that in Ireland. And I don't know what it's like in other countries, but that's a great facility, and they give you. They try to get you work. They train you so that you're prepared to come out. So I'm lucky that I got there. So I know how but I also accepted that when you grow cannabis, the chances of you getting arrested and going to prison are real. So I accepted that a long time. I had to become fearless. Otherwise, I would have been living with anxiety every day. So and I knew that everything happens for a reason. So me going to prison, that was meant to happen, because you're going to meet people, you're going to help people. So I went there with an open heart. I didn't go there in fear. I didn't go there feeling like I was punished. I felt there that I was going there. It was my destiny to go and be in prison, because that's what life throws at you, and everything happens for a reason. And you are exactly where you're meant to be. So for me, this is just part of the journey for me. So I don't have any fear. I don't have any regrets. There's no bitterness. My family, they're strong. My 2 teenage kids, they've grown from this. They've learned things from this that will help them in their lives to be strong and understand emotion and loss and all these things. At least I'm coming back. I wasn't given a death sentence. So they got to have that feeling of loss, but still, work with it, and then know that I'll still come back, and I'm fine. When they meet me, they know I'm fine, and it hasn't changed me. If anything, it's made me a more loving and compassionate person.
And I'll tell you what, that's how you come across, man. And let's wrap it there, because I've taken your time, and you're a beautiful inspiration, man. And I hope I know people will take that. That's what they'll take away, and people will get busy doing meditation and get busy changing their lifestyle, altering their lifestyle a bit. And you've accepted this so graciously well. This and the positivity, man. And but we'll still be shouting to get you out. It's still the sentence runs, and that's not fair, and that's an injustice. So we'll still be out here on the outside, putting our hashtag down, free Patrick Moore now, all that kind of stuff, doing our little pieces to see. And my count up clock will continue to run. You hit 351 days yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boom. So look at, man, we'll keep the clock running, and we'll follow your story all the way. And thank you so much, Pat.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. It was great, man. I appreciate all the work you've done, man. So good luck to you in your endeavors as well, man. Yeah.